She handed me divorce papers with a smile, already moved in with her developer boyfriend. I lost everything. My wife, my job, my reputation. Then I found something buried in the forest that changed the game. Now I'm back, and she's about to learn what a real mistake looks like. My name is Daniel Harrison. I'm 48 years old, and until that morning, I thought I had built something solid. 23 years of marriage. Twin sons, Leo and Noah, both juniors at Duke University. A 4-bedroom house in Greenville, South Carolina, with a mortgage almost paid off. I managed Sullivan's Pharmacy downtown, the kind of place where people knew your name and asked about your family. Respectable, stable, safe. That's what I told myself. Anyway, Jen sat across from me that morning, her hands folded on the table like she was about to lead a business meeting. She'd always been beautiful, even at 46, with that athletic build she maintained through daily runs. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and she wore yoga pants and a fitted top that probably cost more than my entire outfit. "What's this?" I asked, though some part of me already knew. "Divorce papers," she said. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed. "I've thought about this for a long time, Dan. It's not working anymore." I stared at the envelope, my coffee growing cold in my hand. 23 years reduced to legal documents. Not working for who? For me. She didn't look away, didn't flinch. "I've been seeing someone else. His name is Kyle Anderson. He's a real estate developer." The words should have hit me like a freight train, but instead, they felt distant, like she was describing something happening to someone else. Maybe I'd known on some level. Maybe I'd been too comfortable to look too closely. "How long?" My voice came out flat. 8 months. 8 months. While I was working 60-hour weeks at the pharmacy, dealing with insurance companies and elderly customers who couldn't afford their medications, Jen had been building a whole separate life. 8 months of lies. 8 months of coming home to a woman who kissed me goodnight while thinking about someone else. "I'm moving in with him," she continued, as if discussing vacation plans. "He has a condo downtown, overlooking the river. The papers are straightforward. You keep the house, the cars, everything. I just want out." I should have felt something. Rage, maybe. Heartbreak. But sitting there in the kitchen where we'd eaten thousands of meals together, where we'd celebrated the boys' graduations and planned family vacations, I just felt numb. "Does Kyle know you're married?" I asked. She nodded. "He's been patient. We're ready to start our life together." Patient. Like he deserved a medal for waiting while she figured out how to leave me. I opened the envelope, the papers crisp and official. Petition for dissolution of marriage. My hands didn't shake as I flipped through them. Maybe that should have worried me, that lack of reaction. But mostly I just felt tired. "I'll sign them," I said finally. "But I need a few days." Jen stood up, relief washing over her face. "Thank you for being reasonable about this." Reasonable. As if there was anything reasonable about your wife calmly announcing she'd been cheating on you for 8 months with some developer while you worked yourself to exhaustion to keep your family comfortable. She left the kitchen, and I sat there alone, staring at the papers that would end my marriage. Outside, the morning sun was bright and cheerful, completely indifferent to the fact that my entire life had just imploded. I didn't know it then, but that envelope was just the beginning. The hardest part about losing your marriage isn't the moment it ends. It's remembering how it began. I met Jennifer Walsh at a community college chemistry class when I was 23. She was 21, studying business administration, and she had this way of laughing that made everyone around her feel like they were in on some private joke. I was the serious one, already working part-time at a pharmacy while finishing my degree. She called me her grounding wire, said I kept her from floating away. We got married 6 months after I graduated, in a small ceremony at her parents' church. Nothing fancy, but it felt real, felt permanent. A year later, the twins came along, and suddenly we were living in a 1-bedroom apartment with 2 crying infants and approximately 3 hours of sleep between us. Those early years were hard. I worked double shifts to keep us afloat while Jen stayed home with Leo and Noah. Money was always tight, but we were building something, or so I thought. Every promotion I turned down because it meant relocating felt like a sacrifice for the family. Every weekend I spent helping with Little League instead of playing golf with colleagues felt like an investment in what we were creating together. Jen used to bring the boys to the pharmacy after school. Leo would organize the candy display, while Noah peppered me with questions about medications. They'd sit at the consultation counter doing homework while I filled prescriptions, and Jen would bring coffee and kiss my cheek before heading out to run errands. When did that stop? When did she stop looking at me like I mattered? I sat at the kitchen table for hours after she left, the divorce papers still untouched. The house was quiet in a way it never used to be. Even with the boys away at college, there'd always been background noise, Jen on the phone with friends, music playing, the hum of activity. Now there was just silence and the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My phone rang. It was Jerry Caldwell, my assistant manager at the pharmacy. "Hey, boss," Jerry said, his usual cheerful tone somehow grating. "Just checking tomorrow's schedule. We've got that audit coming up." "Right," I managed. "I'll be in early." "You okay? You sound off." I almost told him. Almost said, "My wife's been cheating on me for 8 months and just asked for a divorce." But what good would that do? Jerry had worked for me for 12 years, was a good friend, but this wasn't something I could just unload on someone at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. "Just tired," I said instead. "I'll see you Monday." After I hung up, I finally picked up the divorce papers and read through them properly. Jen's lawyer had been thorough. She wasn't asking for alimony, wasn't trying to split retirement accounts or fight over assets. She just wanted out, clean and simple. Almost too simple, like she'd been planning this for longer than 8 months. The phrase irreconcilable differences appeared multiple times. That's what 23 years came down to. Not infidelity, not betrayal, just differences that apparently couldn't be reconciled. I thought about calling the boys, but what would I say? Their mother had traded stability for some developer's downtown condo, that while they were focusing on midterms and campus life, our family was dissolving. No, that conversation could wait until I figured out how to explain it without sounding like a complete failure. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and did something I hadn't done in years. I looked up Kyle Anderson, real estate developer. His company website featured glossy photos of luxury condos and commercial properties. There he was in the About section, 43 years old, athletic build, perfect smile, looking like he'd stepped out of a cologne advertisement. This was the man my wife had chosen over me. I closed the laptop and sat in the darkness, wondering where everything had gone so wrong. Sunday morning came too soon. I'd barely slept, the divorce papers still sitting on the kitchen table like an unexploded bomb. But I couldn't put off the inevitable any longer. The boys deserved to hear this from me, not through a text from their mother or gossip filtering through family friends. I called Leo first. He answered on the third ring, his voice groggy. "Dad, it's barely 9. What's going on?" I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to talk to you and your brother about something important." "Is Noah with you?" "He's in his room." "Dad, you're scaring me. Is someone sick?" "No one's sick. Can you get Noah?" "Put me on speaker." There was rustling, footsteps, then Noah's voice joined in. "Dad, what's this about?" No easy way to say it. No way to soften the blow. "Your mother and I are getting divorced. She's been seeing someone else for the past 8 months. She's moving out." Silence. Then Leo spoke, his voice tight. "What do you mean, seeing someone else?" "She's having an affair with a man named Kyle Anderson. She told me yesterday morning. The papers are already drawn up." "That's insane," Noah said, and I could hear the anger building. 8 months. She's been lying to all of us for 8 months. "I'm sorry you have to hear this, boys. I know this isn't. Are you okay, Dad?" Leo interrupted, and something in his voice broke through the numbness I'd been feeling since yesterday. "I will be," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "Right now, I need you two to focus on your studies. This doesn't change how much we both love you. Love us." Noah's voice was sharp. "She's blowing up our family for some random guy. How is that love?" I didn't have an answer for that. We talked for another 20 minutes, the boys asking questions I couldn't fully answer. Why? How long had I known? Was there any chance of reconciliation? Each question felt like a fresh wound, reminding me of just how completely Jen had dismantled what we'd built. When we finally hung up, I sat there feeling hollowed out. My sons were hurting, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. The rest of Sunday passed in a blur. I signed the divorce papers with a pen that felt too light for such a heavy decision. Jen came by in the afternoon to pick up more of her things, and we moved around each other like strangers, careful not to make eye contact or accidentally touch. Monday morning, I dragged myself to Sullivan's Pharmacy. Jerry took one look at me and frowned. "Boss, you look like hell. What's going on?" I pulled him into my office and told him everything. Jerry's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, sympathy, before settling on grim determination. That's rough, Dan. Really rough. You need anything, you let me know. I need to work, I said. I need to keep my mind occupied. But word travels fast in small towns. By Tuesday afternoon, Mrs. Henderson, one of our regular customers, gave me a pitying look when I handed over her blood pressure medication. By Wednesday, I noticed people whispering when I walked through the aisles. Then Thursday morning, my boss, Martin Sullivan, called me into his office. He was 72, owned the pharmacy for 40 years, and ran it with old-school values. Dan, we need to talk about your situation, he said, not meeting my eyes. My situation? Your divorce. It's become public knowledge. Several customers have expressed concerns about the family values we represent here. I stared at him, not quite believing what I was hearing. Martin, I'm the one who got cheated on. I'm the victim here. He shifted uncomfortably. I understand that, but perception matters in this business. We cater to families, to church groups. Having a manager going through a messy divorce, it reflects poorly on the establishment. Are you firing me? I'm suggesting you take some time off. Unpaid leave. Let things settle down. Then we can reassess. The words hit me like a physical blow. 22 years I'd given to this pharmacy. 22 years of long hours, of covering shifts when others called in sick, of building relationships with customers. And now I was being pushed out because my wife had an affair? I'll save you the trouble, I said, standing up. I quit. Martin looked relieved. Dan, don't be rash. I'm not being rash. I'm being clear. If my loyalty and work ethic mean so little that you'd fire me over something I didn't do, then I don't want to work here anymore. I cleaned out my office in 10 minutes, Jerry watching with sympathy as I packed my things into a cardboard box. Walking out of that pharmacy felt like losing another piece of my identity, but I refused to let them see me break. In a parking lot, I sat in my car and realized the full scope of what Jen had taken from me. My marriage, my reputation, and now my job. But I wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. Saturday morning, I woke up with no job, no wife, and no clear idea of what came next. The house felt oppressive. Every room filled with memories I didn't want to confront. I needed to get out, clear my head, do something that didn't involve sitting around feeling sorry for myself. I'd always been into geocaching, a hobby I'd picked up years ago when the boys were younger. There was something satisfying about following coordinates, solving puzzles, finding hidden containers that most people walked right past. It was methodical and distracting, exactly what I needed. I grabbed my GPS unit and metal detector, threw them in my truck, and headed to Pisgah National Forest, about an hour outside Greenville. There was a particularly challenging cache I'd been meaning to find, one that had been there since the early 2000s according to the online logs. The trail was steep and rocky, winding through dense forest. May in the mountains meant everything was green and alive, birds calling overhead, the smell of pine and damp earth filling my lungs. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe properly. The coordinates led me to a cluster of old oak trees near Small Creek. I spent 20 minutes searching the obvious spots, hollow logs, rock piles, tree roots, before the metal detector started beeping insistently near what looked like a collapsed stone wall, probably from an old homestead. I brushed away leaves and dirt, expecting to find the geocache container. Instead, my fingers hit something hard and metallic. Curious, I dug deeper, pulling away decades of soil and debris. It was a metal box, maybe 10 inches square, heavy and rusted, but intact. My heart started pounding. This wasn't a geocache. This was something else entirely. I carried it back to my truck, my mind racing. The box had a simple latch, corroded but still functional. Inside my truck, I pried it open carefully. The interior was lined with oiled cloth, and nested within were 12 coins. Large cents, each one preserved in remarkable condition. I didn't know much about coins, but even I could tell these were old and potentially valuable. I pulled out my phone and started researching. Large cents, minted between 1793 and 1857. Some of the rarest American coins, especially in good condition. The one that caught my attention was dated 1793 with a chain design on the reverse. According to what I was reading, that particular coin, a chain sent from the first year of the U.S. Mint, Could be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in pristine condition. And this one looked pristine. My hand was shaking as I photographed each coin, documenting everything. 12 large cents, each one potentially worth a fortune. The earliest dated 1793, the latest 1857. Together, they could represent a life-changing amount of money. I sat there in my truck, staring at the coins spread out on my passenger seat, and for the first time since Jen handed me those divorce papers, I felt something other than despair. I felt hope. Back home, I locked the coins in my safe and spent the rest of the evening researching. The more I learned, the more excited I became. These weren't just valuable. They were museum-quality specimens, the kind of find that collectors dreamed about. By midnight, I'd made a decision. I needed to have these authenticated and appraised by professionals, and I knew exactly where to start. There was an elite auction house in New York, Adams & Burns, that specialized in rare coins. I drafted an email, attached high-resolution photos of 4 of the coins, and explained how I'd found them. I didn't mention the divorce, didn't mention losing my job. This was about the coins, nothing else. I hit send and leaned back in my chair. Whatever happened next, at least I had this. A discovery that was entirely mine, that Jen couldn't touch or claim or take credit for. For the first time in a week, I smiled. The response from Adams & Burns came faster than I expected. Monday morning, 3 days after I'd sent the email, my phone rang with a New York area code. Mr. Harrison? This is Leo Adams from Adams & Burns Auction House. I received your email about the large cents. My heart started racing. Yes, sir. Thank you for calling. I have to say, Mr. Harrison, if your photographs are accurate, what you found is quite extraordinary. The 1793 chain cent alone is museum quality. We'd very much like to examine these coins in person. We talked for 20 minutes about authentication procedures, provenance documentation, and potential auction timelines. Leo suggested I bring 4 of the best specimens to New York for preliminary appraisal. He also mentioned something else. Mr. Harrison, given the value we're discussing, you might want to consider establishing an offshore account for the proceeds. We work with several reputable firms that specialize in asset protection for high-value sales. Offshore accounts, asset protection. These were terms I'd never thought would apply to my life. But here I was, a recently unemployed pharmacy manager, discussing international banking like it was normal. I'd appreciate any guidance you can offer, I said. Excellent. When can you come to New York? 2 days later, I was on a flight to JFK, the 4 best coins secured in a locked case in my carry-on. I'd never felt more out of my element, a small-town guy heading to Manhattan to potentially sell coins worth a fortune. Adams & Burns occupied 3 floors of a building in Midtown. The lobby was all marble and brass, the kind of place where even the receptionist looked like she belonged in a fashion magazine. I gave my name, and within minutes, Leo Adams appeared, mid-50s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of confidence that came from handling million-dollar transactions regularly. Mr. Harrison, welcome. He shook my hand firmly. Please come with me. His office overlooked Fifth Avenue. He examined each coin with a jeweler's loupe, occasionally making notes, his expression growing more animated with each piece. Remarkable, he murmured. The preservation is exceptional. Mr. Harrison, these are legitimate museum-quality specimens. The chain cent alone could fetch upwards of $400,000 at auction, possibly more, given its condition. The number made my head spin. $400,000 for 1 coin. And I had 11 more. If you're willing to consign all 12 coins, Leo continued, we're looking at a total value in the range of $3 to $5 million, depending on bidding activity. $3 to $5 million. I couldn't process it. Yesterday, I was worried about making my mortgage payment. Now I was discussing millions. However, Leo said, pulling out a folder, I want to propose something specific. You mentioned you found these in Pisgah National Forest, on land managed by a conservation trust. I nodded. What if, as part of this transaction, Adams & Burns purchased a specific parcel of land adjacent to where you made your discovery and donated it to the trust? It would enhance the provenance story, demonstrate good stewardship, and provide significant tax benefits for us. How much land are we talking about? There's a 40-acre parcel currently for sale at $6,000. We'd handle the purchase and donation, deducting it from your proceeds, and everyone benefits. It seemed almost too perfect. I'd found a treasure on public land, and now I could help preserve more of it. I'd like that. Excellent. Leo stood and extended his hand. Now, there's someone else I'd like you to meet. My partner has some expertise in international asset management that might be valuable to you. He led me down the hall to another office. The woman who stood to greet me was striking. Late 30s, dark hair, sharp suit, and eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. Mr. Harrison, this is Victoria Lynch, my business partner. Leo made the introduction smoothly. Please, call me Vicky, she said, her handshake firm. Leo tells me you've made quite a discovery. We talked for an hour about offshore accounts, tax implications, and asset protection. Vicky was articulate and direct, explaining complex financial concepts in ways I could understand. She suggested the Cayman Islands for an offshore account and offered to facilitate the setup personally. I'm actually heading there tomorrow for meetings with several clients, she said. If you're interested, you could join me. We'd handle all the paperwork, get your account established properly, and you'd be back home by the weekend. It felt surreal. Yesterday, I was unemployed and divorced. Now I was being invited to the Cayman Islands to set up an offshore account for millions of dollars. I'll do it, I said. Vicky smiled. Excellent. I'll have my assistant book you on the same flight. First class, naturally. Walking out of Adams and Burns that afternoon, I felt like I'd stepped into someone else's life. But it was mine. All of it. And for the first time since Jen handed me those divorce papers, I felt like I was the one in control. The Cayman Islands looked like a postcard. Turquoise water, white sand beaches, palm trees swaying in the warm breeze. I'd never traveled first class before, never stayed in a beachfront resort with room service and an ocean view. Vicky handled everything with effortless efficiency, from the flight arrangements to the hotel reservations. Our first meeting was at Cayman International Trust, a discreet building in Georgetown that didn't advertise its presence. Inside, we met with a British banker named Charles who spoke in measured tones about confidentiality, diversification, and wealth preservation. Mr. Harrison, what we're establishing here is a secure vehicle for your assets, Charles explained. The proceeds from your coin sale will be deposited directly into this account, shielded from unnecessary scrutiny while remaining completely legal and above board. I signed documents I barely understood, trusting Vicky's expertise as she guided me through each page. By the end of the day, I had an offshore account, a financial advisor, and a strange sense of unreality about the whole situation. That evening, Vicky invited me to dinner at a restaurant overlooking the harbor. The sunset painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, and for the first time in weeks, I felt myself relax. You're handling this remarkably well, Vicky said, sipping her wine. Most people in your situation would be overwhelmed. Who says I'm not overwhelmed? I asked, managing a smile. She laughed. Fair point, but you're not showing it. That's a valuable trait in business. Over dinner, we talked about more than just finances. I told her about the divorce, about losing my job, about feeling like my entire life had been dismantled in a matter of weeks. She listened without judgment, occasionally asking questions that made me think more deeply about what I wanted next. You know what I find interesting about you, Dan? She said as we finished our meal. Most people define themselves by their circumstances, but you're not doing that. You're moving forward, making decisions, taking control. That's rare. I don't feel in control, I admitted. I feel like I'm making it up as I go. That's what control looks like, she said. It's not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to figure them out. The next day, we had more meetings, more paperwork, more financial planning. But in between business, Vicky showed me around the island. Hidden beaches, local restaurants, places tourists never found. We talked about everything and nothing, and I realized I was enjoying her company in a way that had nothing to do with business. On our last evening, we sat on the beach outside the hotel, watching the waves roll in. The air was warm and salty, and I felt more at peace than I had in months. What are you going to do when you get back? Vicky asked. Honestly, I have no idea. Sell the house, probably. Figure out what comes next. You could stay in New York for a while, she suggested casually. I have a spare room in my apartment. You'd have time to figure things out without the pressure of being in Greenville, dealing with all the small-town gossip. I looked at her, surprised. That's generous. It's practical, she said with a slight smile. You're going to need to be in New York anyway for the auction preparations. And I think you'd find the city Gives you perspective you can't get in a small town. She was right. Going back to Greenville meant facing Jen, facing the gossip, facing the ruins of my old life. New York meant possibility, a blank slate, a chance to become someone other than the guy whose wife cheated on him. I'll think about it, I said, but I already knew my answer. I accepted Vicky's offer to stay in New York. Back in Greenville, I put the house on the market, packed what I needed, and arranged for storage of everything else. The real estate agent, thankfully not someone who knew Jen, said the market was strong and predicted a quick sale. Moving to Manhattan felt like stepping into a different universe. Vicky's apartment was in the Upper West Side, a spacious two-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. The spare room she offered me was larger than my bedroom back home. "Make yourself comfortable," she said, helping me carry in my luggage. "Consider this your home base while you figure things out." The auction preparations kept me busy. I spent days at Adams and Burns, working with their specialists on documentation, provenance research, and catalog descriptions. The coins were authenticated by 3 independent experts, all of whom confirmed what Leo had said. These were museum-quality specimens worth millions. But it was during a routine verification call that everything started getting complicated. I was in Leo's office when his assistant brought in a report from their legal team. Leo's expression darkened as he read it. "We have a problem," he said, looking up at me. "The coins you found, they match descriptions from an unsolved museum theft in 1987. The Charleston Museum reported 12 large cents stolen from their collection 38 years ago." My stomach dropped. "That's impossible. I found them buried in the forest." "I believe you," Leo said quickly, "but we need to be prepared for this to become complicated. The museum will likely file a claim. We'll need to prove your discovery was legitimate and unrelated to the original theft." Within days, FBI agents were interviewing me. I explained everything: the geocaching hobby, the metal detector signal, the exact location of the find. They were professional but thorough, clearly treating me as a person of interest rather than a suspect. "Mr. Harrison, we're not accusing you of theft," Agent Fletcher said during our third interview. "But we need to establish a clear chain of custody and determine how stolen museum property ended up where you found it." The stress was crushing. What had seemed like a miraculous discovery was now a legal nightmare. The coins were seized as evidence while the investigation proceeded. My offshore account sat empty, and suddenly I was back to being unemployed with no income and mounting legal fees. Vicky was supportive throughout, connecting me with a criminal defense attorney and helping me navigate the complexities. But the situation took another turn when the FBI tracked down the actual thieves. They were in their 70s now, a former museum security guard named Harold Briggs and his accomplice. Harold had pancreatic cancer and decided to confess before he died. He admitted stealing the coins, but claimed he'd buried them in Pisgah National Forest decades ago, intending to retrieve them after the investigation cooled down. He'd never gone back. I didn't know exactly where, Harold told investigators. Just somewhere near those old stone ruins. When I got sick, I figured they'd stay buried forever. The confession cleared me of any wrongdoing, but it created new complications. The Charleston Museum wanted the coins returned. My lawyers argued that as the finder on public land, I had rights to them. The legal battle dragged on for weeks. Meanwhile, life in New York continued. I started exploring the city, taking long walks through neighborhoods I'd never imagined living in. Vicky and I fell into an easy routine. Coffee in the mornings, dinners together when our schedules aligned, long conversations about everything from art to politics. One evening, about 6 weeks after I'd moved in, we were having wine on our balcony overlooking the park. The city lights stretched out endlessly, and I felt both overwhelmed and oddly at peace. "How are you holding up?" Vicky asked. "Honestly, I don't know. Everything I thought would solve my problems has become more problems." She smiled sympathetically. "Welcome to life. It's messy and complicated, and nothing ever works out the way you plan." That's not very encouraging. It's not meant to be encouraging. It's meant to be realistic. She turned to face me directly. "But here's what I've noticed about you, Dan. You keep moving forward. The divorce didn't stop you. Losing your job didn't stop you. Even this legal mess isn't stopping you. That resilience is rare." I want to believe her, but mostly I just felt tired. The coins that were supposed to change everything were locked in an evidence room. My marriage was officially dissolved. The final papers had come through last week, and I was living in someone else's apartment, trying to figure out who I was supposed to be now. But I was still standing. That had to count for something. The legal resolution came in early July, nearly 2 months after the FBI had seized the coins. After extensive negotiations between my lawyers, the Charleston Museum, and federal prosecutors, a settlement was reached. The museum would reclaim 8 of the 12 coins, compensating me at fair market value for my finder's fee, approximately $1.2 million. The remaining 4 coins, which the museum agreed they couldn't definitively prove were part of the original theft, would be mine to sell through Adams and Burns. It wasn't the windfall I'd initially imagined, but it was still life-changing money. More importantly, the legal cloud was lifted. I wasn't a criminal or a suspect. I was just a guy who'd found something valuable and gotten caught up in someone else's crime from decades ago. The auction for my 4 coins was scheduled for late August. Leo estimated they'd bring in another $1 million, possibly more, depending on bidding activity. Between the museum settlement and the auction proceeds, I'd have enough to build whatever life I wanted next. But first, I needed to deal with Greenville. My house had sold quickly, and I needed to go back to finalize the closing and clear out the last of my belongings. I'd been avoiding it, but it couldn't be postponed any longer. Vicky offered to come with me for moral support, but I declined. This was something I needed to face alone. Greenville felt both familiar and foreign when I drove in. The pharmacy where I'd worked looked the same. The coffee shop where Jen and I used to meet was still there, but I felt disconnected from it all, like I was visiting someone else's life. The closing went smoothly. The new owners seemed nice, a young couple with a baby, full of hope about their future in that house. I wondered if they'd be happier there than Jen and I had been. Afterward, I drove past Sullivan's pharmacy. Through the window, I could see Jerry behind the counter, helping a customer. On impulse, I parked and went inside. Jerry looked up and broke into a wide smile. "Dan, I heard you were back in town." We grabbed coffee at the shop next door, and Jerry filled me in on everything I'd missed. Martin Sullivan had retired, selling the pharmacy to a regional chain. Jerry was now assistant manager under new ownership, dealing with corporate policies he hated. "I should have left with you," Jerry said. "This place isn't the same. How's the gossip mill treating my departure?" Jerry grimaced. "Honestly, it was bad for a while. Jen made sure everyone knew her version, that you were neglectful, that she felt abandoned, that Kyle was the one who finally showed her attention. But then Kyle's real estate project started falling apart, and people began questioning her judgment." Falling apart how? Turns out most of his developments were over-leveraged. He's facing multiple lawsuits from investors. Word is he might be filing bankruptcy. Jerry leaned forward. "And between you and me, Jen isn't looking so happy anymore. I saw her at the grocery store last week. She looked stressed and tired. I should have felt satisfaction at hearing that. But mostly I just felt nothing. Jen's choices and their consequences weren't my problem anymore." That evening, I had one more piece of business to handle. Jen had texted asking to meet, saying she wanted to talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table. She looked different, thinner, harder somehow. The confident woman who'd handed me divorce papers 3 months ago was gone, replaced by someone who seemed uncertain. "Dan, thank you for meeting me," she said as I sat down. "What do you want, Jen?" She twisted her coffee cup between her hands. "I've been hearing things. About you finding valuable coins. About you moving to New York. Is it true?" "Some of it. Kyle's business is collapsing. Everything he promised me about his success, about our future together, it was all built on loans he can't repay." Her voice wavered. "I made a mistake, Dan. A huge mistake. I thought I wanted excitement and passion, but what I really needed was stability. What we had." I stared at her, barely believing what I was hearing. "So now that your developer boyfriend is going bankrupt, you want to come back?" "I'm not asking to come back. I know I ruined that. But maybe we could talk about reconciliation. Start over, slowly." The audacity was breathtaking. She destroyed our marriage for a man who was now failing, and she thought she could just return like nothing had happened? "No, Jen. Dan, please. I know I hurt you, but we had 23 years together. That has to mean something." "It meant something," I said, standing up. "Past tense. You made your choice. Now you get to live with it." I walked out, leaving her sitting there. Driving away from that coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in months. Whatever happened next, it wouldn't involve looking backward. The coin auction in late August exceeded all expectations. Bidding was fierce, with collectors from around the world competing. My 4 coins brought in $1.4 million, significantly more than Leo's conservative estimates. Combined with a museum settlement, I was sitting on $2.6 million. But the real surprise came a week after the auction, when Leo called me into his office with unexpected news. Dan, our legal team has been reviewing your case further. Given the circumstances, that you were the innocent finder, that you cooperated fully with authorities, that the coins were only recovered because of your discovery, they're recommending the Charleston Museum pay you an additional finder's fee beyond the standard compensation. How much are we talking about? Another $300,000. They're calling it a recovery bonus to avoid setting precedent, but it's essentially acknowledging that without you, those coins would have stayed buried forever. $300,000 more. I signed the paperwork in a daze. With nearly $3 million secured, I could afford to do anything. I could travel, start a business, invest, and live off the returns. The possibilities were both exhilarating and overwhelming. But first, I had one more piece of business in Greenville. I'd been thinking about the land trust that managed Pisgah National Forest, where I'd found the coins. Adams and Burns had already donated the 40-acre parcel as promised, but I wanted to do more. I reached out to the trust director, Margaret Holloway, and arranged a meeting. Mr. Harrison, the land donation from Adams and Burns was incredibly generous, Margaret said when we met at her office. It secures a critical corridor for wildlife migration. I'd like to make an additional donation, I said. $500,000, unrestricted, to support your conservation work. Margaret's eyes widened. That's extraordinary. Are you sure? I found something valuable on land you protect. This feels right. The donation made news in Greenville. Local papers ran stories about the pharmacy manager turned philanthropist. I ignored most of the attention, but one phone call I couldn't avoid came from Jen. Dan, I saw the article, she said when I answered. $500,000 to a land trust? That's insane. It's my money, Jen. I can do what I want with it. We could have used that money. The boys' college tuition. The boys are fine, I interrupted. I've set up trust fund for both of them. Their education is covered, plus a substantial amount for when they graduate. They're taken care of. Silence. Then, Kyle left me. His company declared bankruptcy. I'm living in a rental apartment and working part-time at a boutique. I should have felt something, sympathy, vindication, anything, but I felt only detachment. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Because it sounds like you're doing great while my life has fallen apart. Jen, I didn't cause your life to fall apart. You made choices. They had consequences. So that's it. You're just going to move on and leave me behind. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what I'm going to do. I hung up and blocked her number. Whatever guilt I'd been carrying dissolved. Jen had chosen her path. I'd chosen mine. A few days later, I was having coffee with Vicky when she mentioned something that caught my attention. I need to confess something, she said, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. When Leo and I first connected you with our firm, I did some background research. I found out about Kyle Anderson. Okay. He and I were business partners 5 years ago. He embezzled nearly $2 million from our joint real estate ventures and destroyed my professional reputation. It took me years to rebuild. She paused. When I realized your wife had left you for him, I saw an opportunity. I stared at her. You used me to get to him. Initially, yes. I wanted to track his activities, maybe find leverage. But then I got to know you, and everything changed. You weren't just a means to an end. You were you. She looked at me directly. I'm telling you this because you deserve honesty. If you want me out of your life, I'll understand. I sat back, processing this. Part of me felt manipulated, but another part understood. Did you help me because of him? Or because you wanted to help me? Both at first. But now, just you. Entirely you. I believed her. More importantly, I didn't care about her initial motives. She'd been there when I needed someone, and her support had been genuine, regardless of how it started. We're good, I said. Her relief was visible. Thank you. That evening, I made a decision. I bought a Corvette Z06, metallic blue, pristine, the kind of car I'd never imagined owning. It wasn't practical or sensible. It was pure indulgence, and it felt perfect. 3 months later, I found myself back in Greenville for Leo and Noah's fall break. We met at a steakhouse downtown, both of them home from Duke for a long weekend. They'd been supportive throughout everything, checking in regularly, never pressuring me to explain more than I was ready to share. "Dad, you look different," Leo said as we waited for our food. "I don't mean the clothes or the car. You just seem lighter somehow." "I feel lighter," I admitted. "Like I finally figured out who I am without defining myself by other people's expectations." Noah grinned. "And you're dating that auction house lady?" "Vicky. We're seeing each other, yes. Nothing official, but we enjoy spending time together." "Good," Leo said firmly. "You deserve to be happy." We talked about their classes, their plans after graduation, their lives that were unfolding with all the possibilities mine once had. They asked about my plans, and I told them I was considering starting a consulting business for small pharmacies, using my experience to help independent owners navigate the industry. "That sounds perfect for you," Noah said. "You always loved helping people." After dinner, as we walked to our cars, Leo stopped me. "Dad, I need to say something. What Mom did, the way she treated you, it was wrong. Noah and I have barely spoken to her since the divorce. She made her choice, and so have we." "You don't have to choose sides," I said. "She's still your mother." "She is," Leo agreed. "But you're our father, and you've shown us what integrity looks like. That matters more." Driving back to New York in my Corvette, I thought about how far I'd come. A year ago, I'd been sitting at a kitchen table, staring at divorce papers, feeling like my life was over. Now I was financially secure, professionally independent, and personally content in ways I'd never been during my marriage. The next week, I had an opportunity one couldn't have imagined months earlier. Jen called from a number I didn't recognize, catching me off guard. "Dan, please don't hang up," she said quickly. "I need help. I'm being evicted from my apartment. I have nowhere to go. Could you loan me?" "No, please. I'm desperate. I made mistakes, but we had 23 years together. That has to count for something." I took a breath, choosing my words carefully. "Those 23 years did count for something, Jen. They taught me what I don't want in my life. You chose Kyle over our marriage. You chose excitement over stability. Now you get to live with those choices. So you're just going to let me be homeless?" "You're not going to be homeless. You have family. You have friends. You have options. I'm just not one of them anymore." I hung up and immediately blocked the new number. Vicky, who was making dinner in the kitchen, looked up questioningly. "Jen," she asked. "Jen." She nodded and returned to cooking. No judgment, no commentary, just acceptance. That was what I needed all along. Someone who understood that moving forward sometimes meant leaving people behind. Later that month, I took my Corvette back to Greenville one final time. I drove past Sullivan's Pharmacy, past the house I'd sold, past all the landmarks of my old life. Then I pulled into a parking spot near a coffee shop and waited. Jen appeared 15 minutes later, walking with someone I recognized as one of her friends. She looked tired and worn, carrying shopping bags from discount stores. When she saw my car, she stopped, staring. I rolled down the window. "Hello, Jen." She approached slowly. "Dan, that's quite a car." "It is. I'm doing well. The boys are doing well. Everything worked out." She looked at the Corvette, then at me, and something shifted in her expression. Realization, maybe, or regret. "I'm glad you're happy." "I am. Genuinely." I pulled the signed divorce papers from my console. I'd kept a copy for exactly this moment. "I want to thank you, actually, for handing me these. You freed me to become someone I never could have been in our marriage." I held them out. She took them with shaking hands. "So what's your plan now, sweetheart?" I asked, putting the car in gear. She had no answer. I drove away, watching her diminish in my rearview mirror. The man who'd signed those papers in despair was gone. In his place was someone stronger, wiser, and finally, truly free. New York waited, and with it, a future I'd built entirely on my own terms.